All right, let's jump right into this. Look, if you work anywhere near the tech space today, you're probably incredibly frustrated by the sheer volume of buzzwords getting thrown around. People are constantly dropping terms like AI, ML, deep learning, and GenAI in meetings, and honestly, half the time it feels like the people using these terms don't actually know the difference between them. Well, in this explainer, we are going to fix that completely. I'm going to give you a crystal clear mental map of exactly what these technologies are, how they nest inside one another, and why understanding this hierarchy is absolutely critical for your work.
And this brings us to the biggest issue we see right now. Is ChatGPT the only kind of AI out there? So many people treat AI and ChatGPT as totally interchangeable words. But this conflation isn't just an annoyance. It causes massive, real-world problems. We're seeing companies and teams literally investing millions of dollars in the totally wrong solutions simply because they don't understand what category of technology they actually need. So by the end of our time together, we're going to demystify this entire map so you know exactly which tool to reach for.
Here's our quick roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the giant box of AI, move inside to machine learning, go a layer deeper into deep learning and GenAI, look at rules versus learning systems, and then finally, clear up some of those common confusions.
Okay, let's start from the very beginning with Section 1, the giant box of AI, and get a grip on our foundational concept.
You know, artificial intelligence is actually a lot simpler than most people make it out to be. It's basically any system that makes a machine appear to behave intelligently. And notice that key word there, appear. Intelligence in this context is a really broad term. It doesn't mean the machine has a soul or that it's sitting in a server room pondering the meaning of life. It just means the machine is doing a task that if a human did it, we'd say, hey, that's intelligent. So AI is the biggest box. Literally everything else we're going to talk about sits inside it.
So just how wide is this umbrella? Well, think about a super simple, rule-based chatbot that just redirects the customer to a returns page. That's AI. It's basic, sure, but it counts. A chess engine that calculates millions of moves to beat a grandmaster? AI. A spam filter catching junk email? AI. And yeah, of course, ChatGPT is also AI. Under the hood, these are radically different kinds of systems, but they all sit safely under this giant AI umbrella because they all appear to behave intelligently.
Moving right along to Section 2, machine learning. Let's see what sits directly inside that big AI box.
So this brings us to machine learning, or ML. What's really fascinating here is the mechanical contrast. In old-school AI, like those simple rule-based systems we just mentioned, a human programmer has to write every single rule. If A happens, do B. The machine just blindly follows the script. But machine learning flips this entirely on its head. Instead of writing out some exhaustive list of rules, you just show the machine millions of examples. You give it the data, and the machine figures out the underlying patterns all by itself. It actually learns.
A perfect everyday example of this is classic spam detection. Imagine trying to manually write the rules for spam. You might code in, if the email says Nigerian prince, mark it as spam, though honestly I'm still waiting on my check for that one. But the problem is spammers adapt. With machine learning, you don't write those brittle rules. You just show the system a million emails labeled spam and a million labeled not spam. It figures out what spam looks like on its own, and suddenly it's catching junk that a human programmer never even thought to write a rule for. That's the magic of learning from data.
Now, let's zoom in even further to Section 3, deep learning and GenAI. These are the inner layers, and definitely the most hyped areas of our map today.
Inside machine learning, we find deep learning. This is a very specific technique within ML that uses computational systems called neural networks, and these are loosely inspired by how the neurons in your brain connect with each other. The word deep here literally refers to the many layers stacked inside these networks. It's an elegant buildup. The first layer might just learn to recognize basic edges in a photo. The next layer takes those edges and learns basic shapes. Then the next layer takes those shapes and learns to recognize complex human faces. It's learning progressively deeper, layer by layer.
And the explosion of this technology is just staggering. Really, everything changed in 2012. A team used a deep neural network to compete in this big image recognition challenge called ImageNet. And they didn't just win, they absolutely crushed every previous record by a margin that shocked the entire computer science field. Almost overnight, deep learning went from this niche academic research area to the undisputed dominant approach in AI. It gave us machines that could transcribe speech and detect cancer in medical scans with near-human accuracy. And that exact, direct lineage brings us right up to November 2022 and the public launch of ChatGPT. Which leads us to the absolute innermost box on our map, generative AI, or GenAI. GenAI sits inside deep learning. And here is the critical distinction you absolutely need to take away from this. Everything we talked about before this point, traditional ML, earlier deep learning, was primarily about recognition, prediction, and classification. Things like, is this a cat or a dog? Is this spam or not? But generative AI does something fundamentally different. It creates. It creates entirely new text, images, audio, video, and code from scratch.
I mean, just look at that number, 100 million. When ChatGPT launched, it hit 1 million users in just 5 days, and 100 million users in 2 months. It's literally the fastest product adoption in human history. And why? Because suddenly, the general public could interact directly with a generative AI system, a system built on a deep learning model, which is a subset of machine learning, which is a subset of AI. See how that nests?
So now that we have our map established, let's pivot to Section 4, Rules versus Learning, and take a peek under the hood at how these systems actually operate.
This right here is perhaps the most fundamental distinction in all of computer science today. On one side, we have rule-based systems. A human writes every single rule. The system follows those strict instructions, and crucially, it never ever gets better on its own. It only knows exactly what the programmer explicitly told it. On the other side, we have learning systems. A human provides a bunch of data and a goal, and the system figures out the rules itself. And the beauty is, the more data it sees, the smarter it gets.
Let's ground this with a really concrete example. Imagine you're monitoring heavy factory equipment. A rule-based system is super simple. Alert me if the engine temperature goes above 80 degrees. That works perfectly, right? Up until you get a mechanical failure that the programmer didn't anticipate, maybe a weird vibration that happens without any heat spike. A learning system, however, analyzes 1,000 examples of past equipment failures. It actually learns to predict a breakdown before it happens, in situations the programmer never even imagined. So rule-based systems are predictable and highly explainable. But learning systems? They are vastly more powerful, even if they're sometimes harder to explain. Knowing which one to use is a massive advantage in your career.
And that brings us to our final stop, Section 5, Common Confusions, and how to make sure we're getting this right in the real world.
All right, here are the 3 biggest mix-ups you can now completely avoid. Step 1. Stop using the broad term AI when you specifically mean GenAI. If you're generating a marketing blog post, you are using GenAI. Being precise about that completely changes your tool choices and your budget. Step 2. Remember that not all AI is ChatGPT. Those massive enterprise systems running bank fraud detection or hospital scan analysis, those are narrow ML models. They are definitely not chatbots. And step 3. Please do not force deep learning onto every single problem. Honestly, sometimes a simple rule-based system is cheaper, it's faster, and it's a whole lot easier to explain to a regulator.
So as we wrap up our nested map, let's summarize this one-way street. AI is the biggest umbrella term. Inside that, machine learning is a smarter, data-driven type of AI. Inside that, deep learning is a wildly powerful type of ML using neural networks. And right in the very center, GenAI is a creative type of deep learning that generates entirely new content. So every GenAI is AI, but not every AI is GenAI. Not even close.
If you found this structured breakdown helpful and you're serious about building real-world skills across all these different layers, you'll definitely want to check out the detailed playlists on the Sahal AI Academy on YouTube. Or if you want to take it a step further, explore becoming a solution AI engineer through Trinity Corp's Academy. They do a phenomenal job breaking down exactly how to architect solutions using the right tool for the right job, rather than just blindly chasing the hype cycle.
And that leaves us with a final question I want you to really ask yourself the next time you sit down at work. Look at the problem right in front of you. Based on this nested map we just explored together, does your specific problem actually require a massive, highly complex deep learning model, or would a simple, explainable, rule-based system be the better, faster choice? Let's stop just chasing the latest GenAI trend and start using the right tool from the right box. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.